Hey guys, this is Daniel Cutright, host of the Winning Mentality podcast. Just wanted to take a minute before we get into the show today and say thank you to all of the listeners, your continual support. It's so much appreciated. And we're actually in the process now of looking for sponsors for the Winning Mentality podcast, which is exciting. And so if you want to get the word out about your brand, product, or event, we have some phenomenal guests coming up soon. You can reach out to me via email. It's cutrightpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, cutrightpodcast@gmail.com. And we can find a way to work together to tap into our network of loyal listeners to keep the show going strong. Support comes from listeners like you. So thank you again for your continued support, encouragement, and sharing each episode to spread these awesome stories and positivity they deliver. If you enjoy the show, you can show your support by donating via Venmo to username @winningmentality. You can think of Venmo as like a virtual tip jar. And so these donations will go towards hosting and production expenses, whether it's $1 a month or $10 a month. It's all appreciated and helps keep the show going strong. And so think of it like once a month, you're buying me, the host, a cup of coffee. I love coffee and I love doing the show. And so it's all very much appreciated. Even if it's just a one-time donation, that's awesome too, and can help us continue to grow the show and leverage additional resources to keep bringing on quality guests and inspire more and more people. And so if you decide to donate, feel free to also include a short message and let me know why, whether you just enjoy the conversations or maybe there was a specific episode that impacted you in some way, shape, or form. I would love to hear about it. Last thing before we get into the interview, I'm always appreciative of the listeners who take the time to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. These reviews and ratings help new listeners find the show and also let future sponsors know what the listeners like you think. Thanks to everyone who recently shared an episode on their Instagram and Twitter as well. Tag me and the guests from that week, and I'll do my best to reshare. So again, thank you for all the support. Now let's get to it.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Winning Mentality. You're probably wondering why it's not Daniel Cutright. It's Kelly Russell. I somehow convinced Dan to let me put him in the hot seat this episode and ask him the questions. Dan,
Crazy.
Today we are flipping the script.
I don't know how you convinced me to do this. I started this podcast so that I wouldn't have to be the one driving the ship necessarily and could let other people talk. But if there's anybody I trust to do this, Kelly, it's you. So appreciate it.
Thank you. I am honored. Thank you for letting me take over your show. I promise I will not ask you. I can't promise that, but we're going to get into some fun questions.
Oh yeah, I'm sure the audience is hoping that you ask me the hard stuff. So.
Well, on that note.
Oh my gosh. No. All right.
Awesome. So I guess first things first, and I'm just trying to take a page from your book here, so feel free to jump in at any point. But I want to know a little bit about your background. So I know that you work in sales for a financial tech company. How in the world did you get into podcasting? Tell me a little bit more about Daniel Cutright.
Yeah. How did I get into podcasting? How did I get into sales? I'll try to keep it brief, but grew up in small town Virginia, Louisa County, middle of nowhere, and grew up around sports my whole life. And so honestly thought I would be in some capacity in sports, which I kind of still am, but not full time. I ran track and cross country at what used to be Lynchburg College, now the University of Lynchburg. So Division III athlete, studied exercise physiology, went on to the University of Virginia to get a master's degree in exercise physiology. And that was honestly even a pivot in itself too. I remember when I was coming out of undergrad thinking, I want to go to PT school and do physical therapy. And I remember doing a physical therapy internship over the summer. And I was just like, I don't know if I see myself doing this for the next 40 years. To me, it was just a lot of the same and cool topics, cool concepts, but just didn't feel like that was kind of the niche. And so, coming out of undergrad, I was still trying to figure out like, what's that next step? What do I want to do? And I thought, because, everybody in my family had gone to grad school pretty much, I just thought that was what you were supposed to do. And so I said, all right, well, let me go and make myself more marketable. I'll go to UVA and get a master's degree in exercise physiology. And, maybe that'll open up some doors. So even going into grad school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do long-term.
Mhm.
And it was actually when I was in grad school, and super thankful for the connections that I made at UVA and the program itself, and some of the doors that opened. But I got connected to a couple different individuals doing some different kind of like sales oriented, like business type things. One of which was a guy who actually had a startup where he was doing mergers and acquisitions for travel agencies. And so he was basically saying like, hey, I want to find people that are looking to either buy an agency or sell an agency. Daniel, I
Mhm.
need somebody to help me make some cold calls and just identify who those people are. He's like, you can work as much or as little as you want to, and I'll pay you for every lead that you generate. And I was like, well, I'm a broke grad student. That sounds awesome. Way to generate some extra money.
Sign me
And
up.
so yeah, it was awesome. I would literally, I would come like home from between classes, have like an hour and a half, bang out like, as many cold calls as I could. Some days I was making 100 cold calls and just, dialing like crazy. And, while that wasn't the most glamorous job, it was a way to create some extra income. And then I really got good on the phone. Like I developed this skill of just, when you're on the phone doing anything in sales, like you gotta be quick witted. Like you've gotta be able to think on your feet and respond, even if you don't know the answer all the time. And like,
Totally.
you just kind of figure out how to like position thing with your words. I just realized like, okay, like I'm actually kind of developing this skill. Maybe I could do something more along the lines of, business or, kind of go that route. And I was coaching a little bit too. One of my friends used to joke with me while I was in grad school and told me I was hustling for money because I was doing like a million different things. And, and so, yeah, I worked with the guy who had the startup for a couple of years. After grad school, was doing a little bit of personal training. That was also a crazy schedule because you would have a client at 7 a.m. and then have like an hour and a half awkward break where it wasn't enough time to go home. You just had to sit at the gym where you weren't getting paid and wait for your next client. And so
Yeah.
to make money on like 6 hours of work, you were there for 10. And so it was just, but my schedule was kind of crazy. And I realized at that point, I was like, all right, I got to find something that's a little bit more stable. And that's when I had a friend of mine actually, she knew I was looking for a job and she said, hey, why don't you apply to this company, which was an educational travel company. They were planning study abroad programs. And she was like, there's a sales position there. I was like, I've never even left the country. And you're thinking I should apply to a study abroad company. And crazy how things work out because I applied, I got hired, and I kind of went to that job thinking like, okay, this will just be like a hold me over job. Like this will be something
Yeah.
that I can develop a skill set, bridge the gap to whatever that next step is. But I had some really cool experiences. I was there, ended up being there for 4 years. I got promoted after the first year into a higher level sales role, and I had some success. I like developed my sales skill, built my resume, and had some cool experiences. And then super fortuitous timing. I still think God was looking out for me in this way, but I literally made a job switch 3 months before COVID hit and went to what's my current job now, where I sell, into the financial tech space or into the banking and, kind of financial industry space, doing sales there. And if you would have asked me at 22 years old, what's the last industry that you think you would ever be in, it would have been anything involving finance. And so it's just kind of funny how sometimes those things work out. I'm
Yeah.
very thankful for my position now. And yeah, I mean, you asked about how did I get into podcasting as well. And I forgot to mention too, I also do announcing, PA announcing for track meets. And so I'll go
Jeez.
around to different
You're like,
universities, and I'm the guy that you hear running his mouth on the mic, which is kind of cool being an athlete. It's like a cool way to stay involved with the sport. So kind of
totally.
a fun side hustle, if you will. But yeah, on the note of the podcast, how did I end up starting this podcast? I was literally out on a run one day during COVID, and this was back April 2020.
Mhm.
And I still remember the exact spot on the trail around Charlottesville I was going. And people are always like, hey, do you run with music? And I'm like, not really, because I just have like really good, like deep thoughts when I'm on runs. I just like, I'll get in this like vein and just go down this rabbit hole in my head.
Must
And
be nice, Dan. Must be nice to have deep
it can
thoughts.
be good and bad. Oh, wow. Yeah. I guess that could be a good and bad thing, but no,
No,
so
it's good. Good
yeah.
thing.
But yeah, I was on this run and I just started thinking through, and it was kind of like, I feel like I've met like a lot of cool people over the
Yeah.
course of my life. There's a lot of negative in the world right now. There's a lot of negative in the media. I wonder if it would be cool to like record conversations with these different people that I've met and just like pull out, their stories, their backgrounds, ways that they've overcome that other people can learn from, because I think that's how people learn the best, is through other people's experiences and through stories. And so I was like, I wonder if I could turn that into a podcast. Now, granted, I knew nothing about podcasting. I didn't have a background in media, any of that kind of stuff. And so I got back
today.
Yeah. Yeah. No, hey, you have more of a media background than I do. I mean, come on, working for Fox, and your podcast episode was great, by the way. But
thank you. We'll touch on how we know each other, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, so I literally came home from that run and I started Google searching like literally how to start a podcast and like what's involved with podcasting. And then I made a list. I made a list of all of the people that I could think of as potential podcast guests. And I just got started. Like I remember my first one. If you go back and listen to the very first episode, is with my good friend Jeff, who made a pretty cool transition. And we talked about that, like as far as career wise, that really was like a leap of faith for him. But I started that episode by saying, hey guys, I have no idea what's going to come out of this. This is our first episode. We're just testing it out and we're going to see where it goes. And 2 years later, here we are. And it's been one of the coolest experiences of just the people that I've met, the doors that it's opened. I would have never imagined, but yeah, it was just one of those things where it was like this idea, and I just started. So yeah, a little bit of a long-winded answer, but that's my background and how that podcast started in a nutshell.
I love it. That's so exciting. And you mentioned, obviously, there were a couple of things there that we're going to touch on in the podcast, but you mentioned first starting out your podcast and thinking of guests. Like, what were you looking for in your first couple of guests? Because obviously you've since grown your audience and stuff, and through connections, which we'll discuss, but what were some characteristics in your first guest that you wanted?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think my initial kind of thought was, because of my background in athletics, it would be cool to interview like current and former athletes. Like that's an easy one. But then I started expanding that cast a little bit to, let's not do just athletes. Like, let's think about entrepreneurs. Let's think about philanthropists. And I just wanted people with, that had accomplished some level of success in something, but had also overcome something. Like I wanted there to be some sort of lesson that like whoever the audience was going to be could pull from and use that to elevate themselves. Like I didn't want a podcast where it was just me on there running my mouth. And, I think there's people that do that really well. That wasn't the flavor that I was looking for. Like I really wanted to be able to have a conversation, pull out stories that would inspire people.
I love that. That's awesome. And then now, like present day, how do you find your podcast guests?
Yeah, so great question. When I first started, it was all people that I had already met in some form or fashion. That was my list. Well, I got to a point where I kind of exhausted that of people that I thought would be good on there. And I remember thinking one day, I was just like, all right, well, how do I keep growing the list of possible guests? Yeah. And what I did was I started reaching out to people that I had already had on the show as guests and say, hey, who do you know that you think would be really good on a podcast guest? And so the first person that actually came out of that, you're looking at her on the screen, it was Kelly.
Thank you. I'm honored. Oh my goodness.
It was because I had my good friend Carrie on, who played 6 years in the NFL, and Carrie immediately texted me back. He's like, I got the perfect person for you. Kelly Russell, here's her information. I'll give her a heads up. But that was how that started. And even just that simple strategy, like everybody knows one person that they think would be good for this.
Absolutely.
And so it's gotten to the point now, Kelly, honestly, where I have more recommendations than I can even keep up with. And awesome. I think that's a really good place to be too. And this is where, I'm still navigating like, all right, well, like if there's somebody that's not a good fit, like how do I kind of like navigate and tell them, we might wait on this one a little bit. Because not everybody is a good fit, and that's okay. Like it's not one of those things where I'm just going to pull Joe Schmo off the street and, hey, tell me what you did last week,
Totally.
So, but the recommendations have been really quality, and it's, I've met some really cool people. I mean, and it's not always just that. I think two, I always keep my radar up and my ears open.
Yeah.
I actually have a guy that I'm working on. I won't say his name because it's not confirmed yet. But a guy on that, he was an Olympic coach. He's been very high profile in the sport that he coaches in. And I met this guy at an event that I was at. And 5 minutes before this guy came over and I met him, I was telling another guy that I knew already about my podcast. Just it came up in conversation. Yeah, I run a podcast outside of what I'm doing here. And this guy comes over and I start listening to this guy talk. This guy's in his 70s and just his stories. I'm like, I could listen to this guy all day. Like, this is incredible. And as the guy's walking away, my friend Ryan turns around and he goes, dude, that's a guy for your podcast. And I was just like, I was thinking the same thing. He goes, hold on, let me grab him. I'll introduce you. He's like, I know him. He brings the guy back. I stand there and have, a 10-minute conversation with this guy. He's like, yeah, would love to be on. Give me a call and we'll set something up. And so I think there's scenarios like that too. I had a guy on he is one of the most viewed episodes as a chiropractor. It's a very different type of episode that a lot of the other ones that I've done. He specializes in reversing neuropathy. And he had been a client of mine, personal training wise, like 10 years ago. And I run into this guy randomly, like a year and a half ago in the gym. We start talking. He tells me he wrote a book on this, reversing neuropathy. And I'm like, that's insane. I was like, dude, I need to get you on my podcast. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, that would be awesome. And he was phenomenal. And so I think it's just that also mindset of just, I always have my radar up. And people make fun of me too, because like my coworkers in my last company used to laugh at me because we would be in an airport at 6 a.m. and I'm striking up conversation with the guy sitting on the bench next to me. Like, it's just kind of who I am, right? Like, I just talk to people.
The sales in you.
I think it was before the sales too, though. Like, I think it was just, I read, when I was coming out of grad school, I started reading a lot of like, the self-development or like leadership type books, which I know sometimes get a bad rep, but for me, those books were super impactful. Things like Think and Grow Rich or How to Win Friends and Influence People. And we're reading in one of those books, and I don't know if it was Napoleon Hill or one of those guys, but he said I had a goal of making 5 new acquaintances every week. He's like, that was just my goal. I wanted to make 5 new acquaintances every week. And I remember hearing that and I'm like, that's such a simple thing, but compounded over time. My gosh, like how many like just crazy people could you meet? Like crazy cool people could you meet, And so I think I've always kind of had that mindset of just talk to people everywhere you go, because you never know, A, who needs that. Like, there are people out there that need a conversation, that need some encouragement. B, just who you're going to meet and the value that they might add to you, or that, conversely, you might add to them.
Totally. Now, you mentioned interviewing people from essentially all different walks of life, from former NFL players to beauty queens to people in media, life coaches. Is there like one common thread or one thing that they all share that you found?
Yeah, you're right. It's a lot of different backgrounds. I think the biggest common thread, thinking back, is that all of these people took action. Like, they all just got started. I think there's a lot of people out there that have these great ideas that stay dormant. They never act on the idea. But if you look at all of these people, it's just they took action. I think none of these people were self-made successes. They all had mentors. They all had people and networks that were helping them along the way. And I think they all realized that. Like, I haven't had anybody on that's just like, yeah, I did this all by myself. I'm awesome. Like, and I was joking. I was like, sometimes these older guys too, it's harder to interview them. Because they are so humble. It's like harder to get them to talk about themselves. And I think there's a level of humility amongst all these people for sure. But I think that's the biggest thing that I realized, because I've had a lot of like people who have, founded successful startups, a mom who was driving Uber and took a company from start to $1 million company in less than 2 years. Like, and she had an idea and she just acted on it. And so I think that's something that I tell people too, is I've had other people say like, well, I want to start a podcast and I'm thinking about doing this. I was like, well, don't get paralysis by analysis. Like, don't try to get everything figured out. Yeah. Like, don't try to get everything so figured out, because then you'll never learn. Like, there's things that I'm still figuring out about how to run this podcast and how to make it better.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. There's still dynamics of interviewing people that I'm still learning how to make it better. And I just think too many people, they just never pull the trigger on something. They just wait and wait and wait and wait and try to get it perfect. And you're going to keep waiting if you do that.
Totally. And I think it also boils down to like belief in yourself. Like
Yeah.
I get so mad at myself sometimes because I think of younger me in my 20s. Now I'm a little bit more seasoned, but I think of myself, my younger self, and I get so frustrated because I could have done something, but I didn't believe in myself. Even 6 months ago, I could have done something. I had opportunities and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just not ready. You just have to jump right in. But that's what I'm noticing. I've obviously listened to a bunch of your podcasts. I think it's like my favorite podcast. But that's like something that I've noticed is that, in your guests, they all have this belief in themselves and they take a chance. And, if they fail, they fail, but they're willing to take that chance with themselves. So I think there's something said about that.
Yeah. And I think that belief in yourself, like it doesn't, that's a work in progress for people. It doesn't just, it's not like you just wake up and have that. And if you have low belief in yourself right now, you can't. Like, I think it's surrounding yourself with other people who have belief too, putting yourself in environments with people that are lifting you up, not pulling you down, limiting the negative that you're putting in your mind. Like if you're always watching the news and the media, that's negative going into your mind. That's killing your belief,
Yeah.
And so like, no offense to people that do that, but like, I think you just have to be very mindful of like what your association is, what you're putting in your mind, and just, do little steps to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, which will raise belief. I'll give you a story on that. I'm really super proud of my mom actually, because, and hopefully she listens to this, but
I'm going to call her, make sure she does.
But yeah, so she, my mom started basically her own art gallery a few years back. And for the longest time, I mean, she was a stay-at-home mom, but she's always done artwork and super, super talented, but was always just kind of working out of home. And I don't think necessarily always had the highest belief in herself, but watching her take that step and open that gallery and say, hey, I'm open for business, even though it's scary. Like I have watched her confidence at my mom's age go through the roof, and just her ability with people, like to communicate with people and connect with people. Like she's finding such joy in that. And I love that example because it is such a testimony of wherever you are in life, it doesn't matter how old you are or like what you've done or where you've been, like you can start at any point,
Any point. Yeah, absolutely. You just have to have the belief in yourself. I think that's the most important thing.
Totally.
And also surrounding yourself, and you touched on this, but surrounding yourself with people who also believe in you. And there are certain people that just bring out the best in you, and that you can call at any moment, and they're like your companions, your cheerleaders. I think that is so essential. Like you surround yourself with people that you want to be like.
Yeah, exactly. People that are maybe a little bit further ahead, people that'll stretch you and pull you to where you want to go. It's the whole, like, you never want to be the smartest person in the room concept.
Yeah.
You always want there to be people that are there that are stretching you. So yeah, I think that's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I want to know from you, I have a couple of like quick questions. The first one is, if you could describe what winning mentality means to you in one sentence, what would it be? Ready?
Biggest thing I think comes to mind is I think about like lack versus abundance mentality or growth versus fixed mindset. I think winning mentality is people that have a growth mindset and an abundance mindset. They see opportunity in whatever the situation is. Everybody's going to have, I know this is more than one sentence, but I'm sorry, this is where we're going.
Going to death points.
I was like, I can't do this in one sentence. This is more than that. But I think it's people that see opportunity no matter what the circumstance is. If there's adversity, they understand that, yeah, you're allowed to experience those emotions of this isn't ideal, this sucks right now, but this can be used to propel me forward. And there can be, this adversity might take me to a place that I would have otherwise never been, And so I think it's that overcoming mentality. It's people that can see opportunity. That's my tried to be condensed answer.
That was perfect. I think we all could use a little bit more winning mentality in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. All right. So I want to know, what is the most interesting thing that you've learned from doing your podcast?
Most interesting thing. There's been some interesting guests. I would say, I think two things that maybe they're just more profound kind of stick out to me. And there's one line that my good friend Delisha said on our episode that I just always think about. And it was something that I grew from in hearing her say it and it was simple, but it was, like I said, profound. And we were talking about communicating with people that might have different viewpoints than you do.
Right.
And she said, one of the things you have to understand is that people's perspectives are based on their lived experiences. And when I stopped and just thought about that, I think it just gave me a greater sense of empathy to really slow down and be a better listener, because I mean, that's always going to exist. There's always gonna be people that you're friends with, or that maybe you're not, but you just have different viewpoints. Learning how to communicate with those people effectively is important, but empathizing, really trying to slow down and understand, okay, they probably think this way because of they had a different experience. And trying to understand what that is, that's how I think that's how we bridge the gap on a lot of these controversial issues, is more of those types of conversations and more of that type of understanding.
Absolutely.
I think that's one. And then I think the other one, this one was kind of surprising to me, but it was when I had our mutual friend Christine on, who you has introduced me to. Yeah, her episode is great. Christine's great.
Go watch it, by the way. Everyone should go back and watch it.
Totally. Watch Christine's and watch Kelly's too. Both great episodes. But one of the things that Christine said, and she runs a successful wellness business, and she does a lot through Instagram. Now, Christine said, I don't consider myself an Instagram influencer. I just don't view myself that way. She's like, all of my business has really been organic. And that surprised me, because I thought, I'm like, okay, she's using Instagram. There's probably things that she's doing to really push a lot of this business and grow her client base that way. But what I realized in talking to her is that she was very much about just adding value all the time, being a person of value, posting things that were valuable. And it was all stuff that was authentic and true to who she was. And I was like, that is such a good lesson, because there's a book that I read this past year, who it was written by the guy who he started his podcast in 2008. At the time, podcasting wasn't nearly as big. It's called Entrepreneurs on Fire. And he had at the time, the top podcast in the world. And one of the lines he said in there was, he said, I just focused on being a person of value rather than of success. And so many people try to focus on, let me be successful. Let me jack up my Instagram following, or let me, get the success, and then I'll bring the product, or then I'll bring the value. And it's the exact opposite. It's just, if you just focus on providing value, all those other things are going to take care of themselves.
1,001%. Totally. This is so interesting. Okay. Have there been any embarrassing moments from doing the podcast, or anything that you wish you could go back and edit out? I was going to go there.
Yeah.
Don't even act like you didn't think I was going to go there.
No. And this one was probably my fault, but just for the flavor of the podcast, I had a guy on there who he dropped a few F-bombs right in the row. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm not offended. It's fine. I was like, but for the purpose of my audience, probably I'm going to want to go back and edit those out. So that was one of the learning moments I had to do. All right, how do I splice out certain pieces in a podcast? So
totally.
But hey, his podcast was great too. It was an awesome episode. He got excited about what he was talking about, and he was, athlete. He was in the moment, and but it was just kind of one of those things that kind of caught me off guard. So I'm sitting there interviewing him, and I'm like, what do I do here? I was like, well, I guess we'll figure it out. So,
oh gosh,
there was that one. And, I think that, listen, most of my guests, all of them have been awesome. And, I think as I alluded to before, I think one of the challenges, is sometimes these guys that are a little bit older and they're so humble, that's where I have to work a little bit harder as an interviewer to really dig and pull stuff out of people. And here's what I've realized. I think there's two big things that make for a really good podcast. And I think one is stories, when people can share interesting stories, because people just learn better that way. There's something in our brains that when you learn through a story versus learning through facts, you're
Yeah.
just going to remember it because there's context around it. The second piece is people that can be a little bit vulnerable and share things that are, it doesn't have to be like, spill your guts, but like a little bit of vulnerability shows that you're human. And that's what
Yeah.
people connect with. And that'll be the feedback that I get from people is like, wow, I listened to this episode and she said this thing that I've been struggling with. Like that really helped me. And those are the types of things that are rewarding for me. Like that's the kind of stuff where I like getting that kind of feedback from people,
Absolutely. It shows like authenticity, and
Yeah.
people want authenticity. And that's exactly, I mean, going back to Christine, my friend, now our mutual friend, which I'm so excited about. In her podcast, she discussed how, or in your podcast, featuring her, she discussed how that is crucial to her business. And she's not going to just put her name on a different product.
Yeah.
She's an actual user. She's an actual fan. So I think all of that is so important.
Totally.
And I feel like I would be remiss. We keep mentioning people. I'd be remiss to not mention how we know each other. So I know you talked about how your friend from, was it your hometown?
Yeah. So yeah, Carrie and Carrie was a year behind me in high school. We were actually on the same Pee Wee basketball team together when we were probably like 6 and 7 years old. Yeah. That picture, I think Carrie said he still has that picture in his house somewhere. So I need to get him to.
Let me guess. He was
it's funny.
a lot taller.
Well, Carrie's a very tall guy now.
Yes.
When we were growing up, Carrie was not that much taller than me at all. We were about the same size. And
what did they feed him in middle school?
It happened in high school. I remember he was a sophomore in high school, and it was like Carrie walked in one day and everybody was just like, what? Like, what the heck happened to this guy? And Carrie got strong and he got, NFL strong. So.
Oh my gosh, that's a great plug for the NFL right there.
No, but yeah, I know. Carrie, high level athlete. Him and I played on the same team. We're basically the same, So
exactly.
Totally
Just go with it. Go with it. It's good.
My sarcasm on my face. Listen to this on audio. Yeah.
No, it's good. So I know Carrie is a friend of mine, and I had the pleasure of seeing you in person. So I did the podcast, your podcast, a couple months ago, and then we finally met up. What was it? 2 months ago?
Back in March. Yeah.
Back in March. Yeah. That was so nice. And it was just so funny because I remember sitting there we went to a game. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, this is all because of Dan. Look at like all the people that you brought together, but it shows the power of networking.
It's true. And that's one of the unintended, I guess, positive consequences of starting this podcast too.
Yeah.
Is I think the network and circle that it's created.
Yeah.
And I know you and I were talking about this a little bit, off the podcast before, but it's, when I bring somebody on and do an episode with them, it creates this deeper, kind of more intimate relationship with the person, where so many of my guests, I exchange weekly texts with them, just because we talk about like real, just good stuff and stuff that, like, when I do this, I'm learning from every episode. Like, this is adding value to me, all these conversations that we have. But yeah, it's created this network of people that are of a like mind. We talked about your association. It's people that are ambitious, that are moving forward in life. And, I think that's just been a really cool, network and circle to create. And so, yeah, when we were able to go to the Knicks game and, I had yourself and Carrie and the Delisha, all people that have been on the show, like such a fun, that was one of the most fun groups of people that I've hung out with in a long time. Like, we had such a blast.
It was so much fun. And then from that, I feel like it's just like this never ending cycle. Like you talked about, it's like, okay, so we both know Carrie. Carrie was kind enough to recommend me. And then I felt like after doing the podcast and meeting you and just having our discussions, I'm like, oh, I have 2 friends who would be perfect for this. And then I'm continuing to think, and my friends are now like, oh my goodness, the friends that you interviewed are like, oh my goodness, I have this person who would be great for a podcast. So
amazing. Yeah. That concept gets me so excited too.
Yeah.
Because it's, there's the concept of 6 degrees of separation, right?
Yes.
Like, you're only 6 degrees away from anybody, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about, I knew Carrie already. Carrie introduced me to you. You introduced me to Christine and Brittany, who we'll be interviewing here in short order. And then
I'm so excited for her too.
Yeah, Christine has actually introduced me to another potential guest. And it's just this, I think to me, it illustrates unlimited possibilities. of all of
Absolutely.
the different people that I can connect with, all the different relationships. And if this has taught me anything, again, I think it goes back to a lot of people chase success. If you can instead chase relationships
Hmm.
and real connections with people, that is your doorway to unlimited possibilities in your life, in my opinion. I think people oftentimes they think about networking in the wrong way. They think
Hmm.
like, I'm networking because I'm trying to get something from this person, or I only network when I need something, or like this person's just networking. Maybe they've been on the receiving end. Like this person's just networking with me because they want something. Like that's not how I think about networking at all. The way that I think about networking is being friendly to people everywhere you go. Like it's just that simple. It's not a turn it off and turn it on mentality. It's all the time is just, can you say hello and smile to somebody? And here's the
Yeah.
thing, because sometimes you get different responses when you have that mentality. Here's what I've learned, because I've been doing this for a long time where I just talk to people everywhere I go. It's the rule of thirds that I think applies in everything. A third of the people, if it's a random stranger, a third of the people that you strike up conversation with are going to want nothing to do with the conversation. That's totally
Mhm.
fine. That's on them. A third of the people are going to entertain the conversation well enough. They're going to be nice enough, but they don't really want to engage. And then you're going to get a third of people that really want to have a conversation with you, and you're going to find some really great connections out of that. And there are people out there too. This is the way that I think about it too, is I think sometimes people are like, well, I just want to mind my own business and go on my way and do my own thing. And I'm like, to me, I almost view that as a little bit of a selfish mentality, because how many people are
Oh,
out there that are just waiting for somebody to acknowledge them, to say
yeah.
hello to them, to look them in the eye and smile. And even if it's the person that doesn't want to have the conversation, that's not on me, that's on them, right?
Right.
Like I will go through that person to say hello and leave a positive impression on the person that really needs it that day. And you don't know what that's going to do for that person and for you, right? Like you don't know
Right.
what that's going to do having that conversation like that you're going to come away with. And so I think people get networking all wrong, right? I think it's just like, be friendly everywhere you go, be interested in people, be genuinely interested in other people. That was something that I had to grow in that area. I had to become a better listener.
Mhm.
But I now have gotten to the point where I've done it so much where I'm just genuinely fascinated in other people's stories and backgrounds, and people
Yeah.
can feel that, right? People can feel that. They want to talk to you, and you meet some really awesome people, and that is what's going to open up some, and it's been evident in my life. Like it's opened up just so many cool doors for opportunities.
Absolutely. People, I have friends who call me, I'm known as like the connector.
Yeah.
I just know a lot of people from work or just like going out and saying hi to people, meeting people through friends, through family members and stuff like that. But it's just this like cycle. Like you just have to make an effort and like you can find some common ground and strike up a
That's
conversation with
key.
anyone.
That's huge. The
Yeah.
common ground piece is huge. And I think
Yeah.
that when you're networking with people, it's like, just try to do that. Like if you're somebody
Yes.
that's, and because I know there's people that are listening to this where they're going to be like, oh, well, Daniel, you're just a people person. Like you're outgoing. And listen, I'm an introverted extrovert. I like my time to myself just as much.
Really?
Oh yeah. Like my first thing in the morning, like I don't want to talk to anybody. Like I want my cup of coffee and just chill. And like that's me being
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
Um, and so people are going to think like, oh, well, you got to be an extrovert to do that. And that's not true.
No.
There are people that some of the greatest just connectors of people and best people that I know that are introverts by nature, you
Yeah.
know? But I think you're right. It's if you can just focus on, let me just find common ground with somebody. Think about it this way. If you're in another country, right? If you're in China where basically nobody speaks English and you come across somebody else that's American, there is instant trust there, even though you've
Right.
never met that person in your life. Why? Because you are now a minority of people that have this slim thing in common in that place. And so
Yeah.
if you're out and about and all of a sudden you're talking to somebody and, oh man, where are you from? Oh, I'm actually from Lynchburg. Oh my gosh, like I went to school in Lynchburg. I went to Lynchburg College. No way. Like, so did I actually. I graduated in 2010. Man, I graduated in 2012. I wonder if we ever overlapped. Like those types of things, all of a sudden now there's trust there. And when you find common ground, then you can take people to higher ground. That's when
Yeah.
you can then get into the deeper elements of conversation, connections, and who knows where it's going to go.
Love that. So true. That's got the Kelly Russell stamp of approval.
Love it, man. Hey,
Can you
anytime
add
you get a
sound
Kelly
effects?
Russell stamp of approval, it's good. Yeah.
I'm honored. Thank you. Can you add like a sound effect, maybe like a ding?
I'll see if I can do that in the editing. I haven't done that one yet, but we'll get
Well,
a
I
little
stamped
bell
it.
for
Ding.
you.
Okay, so I know that we obviously are almost at an hour, so we're winding down, but I would,
Wow.
I know, crazy, right? But I want to ask you some rapid fire questions. And I told you this before, you have not seen these questions. I am so excited to ask you them because I feel like rapid fire is such a great way to get to know someone without asking the hard questions, but you ask
Boy, here we go.
around the hard questions. Are you ready?
Right. I think so. We'll see.
Okay, quick answers. Ready?
All right.
If you could sit down and have lunch with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Tony Bennett, coach of UVA basketball. Everybody knows that about me.
Why?
Because I think he is one of the best humans. I think he's one of the best, most genuine humans out there. Aside from basketball, he's run a great basketball program, but I think just great guy, great sense of humor, all around incredible, just authentic. Yeah, I could go on and on about Tony.
I love it. You're fangirling. I love this.
Oh, I totally am fangirling. I said at one point, Tony Bennett's going to be on this podcast at some point, and that's when I'll know I've made it, when I get Tony Bennett on the podcast. So
we have to tag him. We have to make this happen. Let's
Hopefully
do it.
he listens. Yeah.
Tony, do it for Dan, please. Just don't make me come find you.
He's in now. That was the stamp of approval we needed.
That was ding. Okay. What is your biggest regret in life?
Wow, biggest regret in life. Oh man. I don't have a lot of regrets.
Great.
There's nothing that when you ask that question pops out into my head, because I'm not one to hold on to stuff. I reflect on things, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. And I think that you can learn from every situation. So I really don't have regrets in life. No.
Love that. What's your biggest accomplishment then?
Oh, biggest accomplishment. Hopefully it hasn't happened yet.
I like that answer.
I think one of the things, and maybe this isn't necessarily an accomplishment, but I think probably one of the things I'm most proud of is just the family. I think my parents are awesome. My sisters and I are really close, and I think just it's an accomplishment to be in a position where you are that close with your family, and that you have those relationships, because it's kind of rare these days.
So true.
And so I think anytime I think about my biggest accomplishment, it's going to be around relationships with people, and always trying to serve those relationships and protect them. Fame is fleeting. I've learned that from, a lot of people, my dad, especially, who's super humble, but in anything that we accomplish, like, in the grand scheme of things, how you're treating other people, I think, and, just your interactions in that way, I think, are much more important.
Do good, and good comes back to you.
Totally.
What is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Oh, younger self, be a better listener, for sure. Yeah. I think when I was in college, admittedly, like, I think there probably was a little bit of arrogance there. I don't think I was like, I hope I wasn't like obnoxious, at least, but like, I still think, like, the college athlete version of me, like, I think it was probably more immaturity than anything.
Yeah.
And I think that there were a lot of just areas that I had to grow up and realize, like, dude, it's not all about you,
Right.
And it's much more about other people. So I think, going back, that would be the piece of advice. I would smack him upside the head a little bit.
Love it. Okay. Switching gears, one meal you could have for the rest of your life. What is that?
Mac and cheese, hands down. That's the go-to. That's the guilty pleasure.
I don't know if you could hear through the computer, but my stomach has been growling this entire time, and that just made it like really growl.
Oh yeah, that is
pasta.
That's one of those foods that I could eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, doesn't matter. Put some mac and cheese in front of me, and we're good to go.
I'm a big pasta girl. Everyone knows it.
Love it.
If you were doing your current job and money was not an object, what would you be doing?
Probably coaching. Yeah, coaching track, cross country. And I think the reason is like when I think, people that are listening to this too, when you evaluate and answer that question, I think it's like, what's the one thing that like stirs you emotionally?
Mhm.
And as crazy as it is, like I love watching people overcome and
Yeah,
succeed. And like in sports, like I think sports is a microcosm of life. Like I think you learn a
yeah.
lot of lessons through that. It's hard at times, like there's tears at times, you're working through things, but to watch people like make those clicks and grow, and having coached at the high school level, it is such a malleable age group where
Mhm.
those kids need positive influence. Like they need people to help shape them and just encourage them. Like people need encouragement. People are starving for encouragement. My gosh. And, so and I think because I ran and I just get super passionate about sports in general. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I would be in my element. Either that or like, sitting courtside on ESPN somewhere calling a game, I think would be just talking about sports.
Wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
All right, I'm giving you one superpower. What is it?
One superpower. Oh man.
Choose wisely.
Wow. Do I say time travel?
That's yeah.
Is that a wild card?
Love it. Do you want to go back or do you want to go forward?
Can I go both? Is that
No, no, because then you would be in the present,
no,
right?
you'd be in the future. You
Want to dip into
into both and like
all right, I can give you that because you're a nice guy. I'll give you that.
I probably need to think on that question more. I don't know if it's actually time travel. That's just the first thing that comes to mind. Or maybe just jump really high so I can dunk a basketball. I don't know. That's kind of a useless power, but that's a fun one anyway.
I was not expecting that. Okay. What is the best compliment you've ever been given?
Best compliment I've ever been given. Man, I mean, aside from my good look, I'm just kidding. No, that was totally a joke for people listening. I think my mom has told me from a young age that I had a gift at public speaking, and
Yeah.
I've had people tell me a lot that I'm an effective communicator, and so
Yeah.
I say that with the utmost like humility, but
Yeah.
it is very humbling to hear that. But I think I also recognize that, and I think the reason I can be humble about it is because I think it's a gift. I think we all have gifts that we're given, and we just have to learn what those are. For me, for whatever reason, communication just comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
Like it's just something that now have I had to work at it still? Absolutely. But I think I have a natural aptitude for talking, whether it's in front of people or something like this, or, doing PA announcing at a track meet. And I think there's a certain level of respect to that because knowing that it's a gift that was given to me, in my opinion,
I love it. It is a gift. Everyone has it. I truly believe that. Everyone has a special gift, talent, whatever else. They just have to find it. Sometimes
Totally.
it takes longer than others, but that's okay. All right, next rapid fire question. What makes you happiest? And please try and refrain from saying spending time with me. I know that's the case, but outside of spending time with me, what makes you happiest?
My time in New York was a lot of fun. That was great.
You're welcome back anytime. New York loves Dan.
Yeah. What makes me the happiest is, I mean, this is going to be a redundant answer, but I really do think it's like watching other people succeed and overcome stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and this is like, it's so silly, but like, I'll even see those clips of America's Got Talent come up where like these people come on stage and they get the gold. I don't watch TV. I don't even watch the show. I just see these clips that pop up on my feed. And I'm like, why are you guys making my eyes sweat right now by watching this clip of these people like overcoming stuff, So
is that what it is? It's eye sweat.
It's totally, my eyes start to sweat a little bit,
Getting a lot of work in.
So no, I mean, I do. Yeah, I think that would be one piece, is like watching other people overcome and succeed. But aside from that, kind of like less flowery answer maybe would be travel in general. I love getting out, seeing new places, experiencing new culture, meeting the people there. Like that's when I travel, I'll travel by myself a lot.
Yeah.
and I love it. I think it's highly underrated. If you're listening to this and you've never done it, you need to take a trip by yourself somewhere. Within reason, go somewhere safe. But I just think like it forces you out of your comfort zone. You talk to people that you would have never otherwise talked to. And it's just I love seeing different places. So I'm going to Utah next month, to Moab. It's the first time I've ever been.
Did I tell you about Moab?
I don't know if we
That's
talked
like
about this actually.
a top 3 favorite place. We'll have to sidebar about Moab, but if you have not been to Moab, you have to go to Moab.
Love it.
Try the Rocky Mountain oysters.
Oh, what's that?
The Rocky Mountain oysters. You have to try them. When in Moab, don't yuck my yum. You got to try them. I mean, are they delicious? No, but you have to do it. When in Rome.
I'm open-minded. Love it. No, yes, I'm going next month to Moab.
I'm going to live vicariously through you. By the way, you're a great follow on Instagram because you're always traveling. First of all, you're funny, but you're always traveling. And
wait, hold on. Can we say that again for the audience?
He's a great follow on Instagram. He's so funny and charming, and he travels all the time. And I'm not being paid to say this. No, but seriously, you are a great follow, and I like live vicariously through your travels, which is so funny because at the top of the podcast, you mentioned that you didn't you worked for a travel company, but you didn't really travel much. And I'm like, he's always traveling.
Yeah, since that job is what's burned me into a lot of travel. So
and since then, you got bit by the travel bug, huh?
It's real. Yep. So
I heard it's contagious too. So watch out. We'll have
hey,
dueling Instagram stories.
There we go. Yeah, I'll post good pictures. I promise.
You better create good content for me. All right, I'm on to my last rapid fire question. I've been very, very, I guess, fun with these questions. I haven't gotten deep, but here's one. If you could only describe yourself in one word, what would it be and why? One word. It could be deep. It could be funny. It could be whatever you want.
One word. Man, that's a tough one. One word.
Told you
I mean, first, I think the word that I am always working and aspiring to get more to is authentic. Yeah. Like I always want to make sure that I'm just true to myself.
Yeah.
And not caring what other people think. And I think, and here's a piece of vulnerability. I think that one of the things that has always been a struggle for me is being a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
That is,
sign me up.
I think that is a natural thing for me. It's like, and I've always had to fight that, and just remind myself that, that person's probably not thinking about you as much as you think they're thinking about you. Nobody ever erected a statue for a critic. So even if there are people that are criticizing you, right? Like, it just doesn't matter. And I think sometimes when you have a tendency to be a people pleaser, you can start to idolize what you think that person thinks about you. And that can start occupying mental space that it shouldn't. And so, so I think like being able to, like, that's a constant work in progress for me, is to try to like move away from that and just being so comfortable with being authentic. And I'm definitely, I mean, I know we said one word, but competitive is the other one. I'm highly competitive at things, and probably hate losing more than I actually like winning is a thing. Yeah. So, and I mean, and you said the other one, funny, like that's, I'm just kidding. But,
by the way, if anyone was like doing a drinking game, it would probably have to be using the word authenticity or authentic. I think we've said it like 50 times. So
I think we have. Yeah. It was overused. And maybe that was why it was.
No, it's great.
Yeah. It's funny that you're asking me these questions too, because as deep of a thinker as I am and like running this podcast, I'm so often the one that's drilling other people and getting them to talk about these things. So like the moment of where I actually have to like stop and like reflect and spit these out, it's a good mental exercise.
I love it. Well, thank you for participating. You're a great sport.
Yeah.
And I told you I kept it PG. I didn't ask anything.
It was great.
Good. Yeah. All right. I know we have to wrap it up, but I want to ask you one final question. And on a high note, what are you most looking forward to coming up in the next couple months for Winning Mentality?
Yeah, just the guests that are still to come on. I think I look back and there's a library of phenomenal episodes for people to go back and learn from that I believe are all still very relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I said earlier in the show, like I think just the possibilities and doors that will open to people that I haven't even met yet.
Yeah.
And for me, I get as much out of doing these episodes as anybody because I'm learning from the conversations, meeting new people, making new connections. And, again, I'll say it again, but I think just opportunity comes out of relationships and the connections that you make and just being genuine with people, being real with people. And so I think there's a lot to look forward to. I think there's a lot that I'm still learning about the podcast itself. I think it's one of those things where I think sometimes when you start something like a podcast, you don't even realize how far it stretches, like what your audience is. And I've heard a lot of other like shows and, things like that say the same thing. It's like they're like, we had no idea how big we'd gotten until we showed up at an airport in Sweden and these kids came running up to us and said, "Hey, are you the guys from such and such?" And they were like, "Holy crap, like our show is international, like what?" And so like I think there's just that unlimited possibility, right? Of like I'm excited to see what doors open and where this continues to go.
Totally. I'm so excited too. Lots of good things to look forward to.
Yeah. Hey, I will say, Kelly, you are awesome at this. And like I said at the beginning, there's nobody I would have trusted more to do this than you on this show. And
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I will say, guys, go back and listen to Kelly's episode 2. Phenomenal perspective and mindset. And thanks for nudging me to do this episode. This was a lot of fun.
Of course. Thank you for allowing me to hijack your show.
Well,
I will return the reins to you.
I was going to say, after people listen to this, they might kick me out and you might be running the show from now on. So they're going to say, "Hey,
it'll just be rapid fire.
That bum out of there. Let's put Kelly on there to run this show." So
absolutely not. I do not see that ever happening, but I appreciate you.
No, this was great. So
thank you so much for having me on. And thank you for being so honest and transparent. And I mean, I'm your biggest fan, but hearing from you and listening to all of the different stories that you shared and all of the different people that you interview is just so inspiring for me. So I know that you said that you don't listen to music when you run, but I go for walks and I listen to podcasts, and this is at the top of my list, like the tippy top of your podcast.
Too kind. So
it's the truth.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, Kelly, I don't know if you want to wrap this up, but this is kind of
take it over. It's all your baby now. Give me the baby back.
No, I was just saying, hey guys, go listen to this episode, listen to the other episodes. Well, if you're hearing this, you did listen to this episode. Go back and listen to other episodes, share it, follow Kelly on Instagram, follow me on Instagram, repost and tag me, and then I will repost that as well. So
totally
appreciate you guys listening, appreciate the entire audience. Hopefully this added value in some way, shape, or form, and we'll see you on the next one.
Love it. Thank you, Dan.
All right, thanks, Kelly.